Look around at your life right now. Your bank account, your relationships, your health, your daily environment. Everything you see is a direct reflection of what you've been willing to tolerate. Napoleon Hill discovered something profound after decades of studying successful people. The quality of your life is determined not by what you desire, not by what you dream about, not by what you say you want, but by what you tolerate. The wealthy don't tolerate mediocrity. The healthy don't tolerate destructive habits. The successful don't tolerate time-wasting activities. And the free don't tolerate toxic relationships. But most people tolerate all of these things and then wonder why their life isn't changing. Today, you're going to understand exactly why you become what you tolerate and how to stop tolerating anything that doesn't serve your highest vision. Before we dive deeper, I need you to make a powerful declaration. If you're ready to stop settling, if you're ready to raise your standards, if you're ready to become the person you were meant to be, type in the comments, "I refuse to settle." These 4 words carry tremendous power. They're a line in the sand. They're a declaration to the universe that you're done with mediocrity. Pause this video now. Go to the comments, type, "I refuse to settle," and then continue watching. And if this message is already resonating deep in your soul, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss content that will elevate your life and leave your like. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Someone who's been settling. Someone who's been tolerating less than they deserve. You could be the catalyst for their transformation. Now, let's get into what really matters. Here's the truth that Napoleon Hill proved through his research. Your life will always conform to the standards you're willing to accept. Not the standards you say you have. Not the standards you wish you had. The standards you actually enforce through your daily choices. If you tolerate being broke, you'll stay broke. If you tolerate being disrespected, you'll continue to be disrespected. If you tolerate poor health, your health will remain poor. If you tolerate wasting time, time will continue to be wasted. This is not judgment. This is law. It's the law of standards, and it operates with mathematical precision in every person's life. Think about it. Every successful person Napoleon Hill studied had one thing in common. They absolutely refused to tolerate anything below their standards. They didn't tolerate employees who didn't perform. They didn't tolerate business practices that didn't serve excellence. They didn't tolerate partnerships that weren't mutually beneficial. They didn't tolerate habits in themselves that led to mediocrity. And because they refused to tolerate these things, those things disappeared from their lives. But most people operate exactly opposite. They tolerate everything. They tolerate the job they hate. They tolerate the friend who drains them. They tolerate the debt that stresses them. They tolerate the clutter in their home. They tolerate the negative thoughts in their mind. They tolerate the bad habits in their routine. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's what you need to understand. Tolerance equals acceptance. When you tolerate something, you're telling the universe, "This is acceptable to me." And the universe responds by giving you more of what you've accepted. Napoleon Hill called this the law of attraction, but it's really the law of tolerance. You attract what you tolerate. If you tolerate poverty thinking, you attract poverty. If you tolerate toxic people, you attract more toxic people. If you tolerate laziness in yourself, you attract circumstances that keep you lazy. If you tolerate fear ruling your decisions, you attract more things to fear. Everything you tolerate becomes your reality, and everything you refuse to tolerate eventually leaves your life. Now, let me make something very clear. Tolerance is different from patience. Patience is peaceful waiting with purpose. Patience is allowing something to unfold in divine timing while you take aligned action. Tolerance is passive acceptance of something that doesn't serve you. Tolerance is letting something stay that should go. Tolerance is settling for less when you could have more. Napoleon Hill talked about the importance of patience in achievement. He said great things take time to build. But he also said that successful people are ruthlessly impatient with anything that doesn't align with their vision. They're patient with the process, but intolerant of obstacles that shouldn't exist. So let's get specific. What are you tolerating right now that's keeping you stuck? Let's start with the most obvious, tolerating financial mediocrity. Most people say they want to be wealthy, but they tolerate habits and behaviors that guarantee poverty. They tolerate spending money on things that don't matter. They tolerate not having a budget. They tolerate ignoring their debt. They tolerate not educating themselves about money. They tolerate staying in jobs that underpay them. They tolerate not creating additional income streams. And then they say, "I want to be rich." But wanting is not enough. Napoleon Hill proved that desire without intolerance for the current situation produces nothing. The wealthy became wealthy because they reached a point where they said, I will not tolerate being broke another day. I refuse to accept financial struggle. I'm done settling for less than abundance. And that refusal, that intolerance, created the energy and motivation to change everything. Because here's what happens when you stop tolerating something. You create a gap. You create tension. You create discomfort. And that discomfort forces you to move. Tolerance is comfortable. It's easy. It requires no change. That's why people stay stuck. They become comfortable with their discomfort. But intolerance is uncomfortable. It says this is not okay. This must change. And that statement creates the energy for transformation. So ask yourself, what financial behaviors am I tolerating that I should refuse? Am I tolerating overspending? Am I tolerating financial ignorance? Am I tolerating underearning? Am I tolerating debt accumulation? Am I tolerating lack of investment? Whatever it is, you must reach a point where you say, no more. I refuse to tolerate this another day. And then you must take action that matches your refusal. Because intolerance without action is just complaining. But intolerance with action is transformation. Second, let's talk about tolerating negative people in your life. Napoleon Hill's mastermind principle teaches that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So look at your 5 closest relationships. Are they elevating you or draining you? Are they inspiring you or limiting you? Are they supporting your growth or sabotaging it? And be honest. Most people tolerate relationships that hurt them because they're afraid of being alone, afraid of confrontation, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of change. So they keep negative people in their inner circle and wonder why they can't rise. But here's the truth. Every moment you spend with someone who doesn't believe in your potential is a moment you're not spending with someone who does. Every conversation with a complainer is a conversation you're not having with an encourager. Every hour with a dream killer is an hour you're not spending with a dream builder. You cannot reach your potential while tolerating people who are comfortable with you staying small. It's impossible. Napoleon Hill proved it. He showed that successful people carefully curate their relationships. They don't let just anyone into their inner circle. They're selective. They're protective of their energy. They refuse to tolerate relationships that drain them, even if those relationships have history, even if they're family, even if ending them is uncomfortable, because they understand that their destiny is too important to be derailed by people who don't share their vision. So you need to do an audit. Who in your life consistently brings negativity? Who doubts your dreams? Who drains your energy? Who pulls you toward mediocrity? And then you need to make a decision. Either they rise to meet your new standards or they exit your life. And yes, this is hard. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, some people will be hurt. But you cannot sacrifice your future to protect someone else's comfort. Napoleon Hill said that temporary sacrifice leads to permanent gain. Sacrificing negative relationships is temporary pain for permanent elevation. Third, let's talk about tolerating your own bad habits. This is a big one because you can change your environment, you can change your relationships. But if you don't stop tolerating destructive habits in yourself, nothing changes. And most people are incredibly tolerant of their own dysfunction. They tolerate sleeping too late. They tolerate eating poorly. They tolerate not exercising. They tolerate procrastination. They tolerate distraction. They tolerate negative self-talk. They tolerate not following through on commitments to themselves. And every time you tolerate a bad habit in yourself, you're training yourself that your standards don't matter, that your word to yourself means nothing, that mediocrity is acceptable. Napoleon Hill taught that self-discipline is the master key to riches. But self-discipline is impossible when you tolerate everything you do. Self-discipline requires intolerance. It requires you to say, I will not tolerate this behavior in myself, and then enforce it. Think about it. Successful people don't tolerate themselves being lazy, so laziness can't exist in their life. Healthy people don't tolerate themselves eating garbage, so unhealthy eating can't exist in their life. Wealthy people don't tolerate themselves wasting money, so financial irresponsibility can't exist in their life. Do you see the pattern? The moment you stop tolerating something in yourself, that thing begins to disappear. But it requires ruthless honesty. You have to look at yourself and identify what you've been tolerating that's holding you back. Maybe you've been tolerating your own excuses. Maybe you've been tolerating your own fear. Maybe you've been tolerating your own self-sabotage. Whatever it is, you must reach a breaking point. You must reach a moment where you say, I refuse to tolerate this version of myself anymore. I'm done. And that moment, that declaration, is the beginning of transformation. Napoleon Hill called this the burning desire. It's not just wanting change. It's being so utterly done with who you've been that going back is not an option. Fourth, let's talk about tolerating your environment. Your environment has a massive impact on your psychology, your energy, your productivity, and your results. Napoleon Hill wrote about the importance of having a workspace that inspires greatness, a home that brings peace, and surroundings that elevate your thinking. But most people tolerate environments that do the opposite. They tolerate clutter that creates mental chaos. They tolerate mess that drains their energy. They tolerate living in places that depress them. They tolerate working in spaces that kill their creativity. And they wonder why they can't think clearly, can't stay motivated, can't produce excellent work. Your environment is either supporting your vision or sabotaging it. There's no neutral. If you tolerate an environment that doesn't serve you, you're programming yourself for the results that environment produces. So look around right now. Your home, your car, your workspace. What are you tolerating that shouldn't be there? What's creating stress? What's creating distraction? What's lowering your vibration? And then do something about it. Clean the clutter. Organize the chaos. Create beauty where there's ugliness. Invest in your environment. Napoleon Hill studied millionaires who invested significantly in their surroundings because they understood that environment shapes consciousness and consciousness shapes results. You don't need to be rich to have an environment that supports success. You need to refuse to tolerate an environment that supports failure. Fifth, let's talk about tolerating mediocre results. Most people produce mediocre results and then accept them. They make a little money and accept it. They achieve a little success and stop there. They get a little recognition and settle. But Napoleon Hill discovered that extraordinary achievers have a different relationship with results. They refuse to tolerate anything less than excellent. When they produce something mediocre, they don't accept it. They redo it. They improve it. They push until it meets their standard. This isn't perfectionism. Perfectionism is fear of judgment. This is excellence. Excellence is commitment to your standard. And when you stop tolerating mediocre results from yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to operate at a higher level. Your actions become more intentional. Your focus becomes sharper. Your standards become your identity. And the results? They transform. But as long as you tolerate good enough is all you'll ever produce. Napoleon Hill said that the quality of a man's life is in direct proportion to his commitment to excellence, regardless of his chosen field. So ask yourself, where in my life am I producing mediocre results and accepting them? Where am I doing just enough to get by? Where am I settling for less than my best? And then make the decision, no more. I refuse to tolerate mediocrity in my output. I refuse to tolerate average effort. I refuse to tolerate anything less than my highest standard. 6. Let's talk about tolerating your own limiting beliefs. This is deep. This is about what you believe about yourself, about money, about success, about what's possible for someone like you. Napoleon Hill proved that belief determines outcome. If you believe you can't succeed, you won't. If you believe you're not smart enough, you'll prove yourself right. If you believe wealth isn't for people like you, you'll stay broke. Your beliefs create your reality. But here's what most people don't realize. Beliefs are just thoughts you've tolerated long enough that they feel like truth. At some point, you heard or experienced something that planted a limiting belief. And instead of challenging it, you tolerated it. You let it stay. You let it grow. You let it become your identity. And now it's running your life. I'm not good with money. That's a belief you're tolerating. I'm not smart enough to succeed. That's a belief you're tolerating. Success is for other people, not me. That's a belief you're tolerating. And as long as you tolerate these beliefs, they will create corresponding results. But here's the power. You can stop tolerating them. You can challenge them. You can replace them. Napoleon Hill taught about autosuggestion, the process of deliberately feeding your mind with new beliefs until they replace the old ones. But this only works if you first refuse to tolerate the old beliefs. You have to reach a point where you say, I will not tolerate this lie about myself anymore. I refuse to accept this limitation as truth. And then you actively work to install new beliefs. You repeat affirmations. You consume content that expands your belief system. You surround yourself with people who believe bigger. You take actions that prove the old belief wrong. And over time, the old belief loses its power and the new belief takes over. But it starts with intolerance. It starts with refusing to let limiting beliefs occupy space in your mind rent-free. 7th, let's talk about tolerating wasted time. Time is the one resource you can never get back. Money can be earned again. Relationships can be rebuilt. Health can be restored. But time, once gone, is gone forever. Napoleon Hill understood this deeply. He wrote about the importance of using time wisely, of investing every hour in activities that move you toward your goals. But most people tolerate massive time waste. They tolerate scrolling social media for hours. They tolerate watching shows they don't even enjoy. They tolerate conversations that go nowhere. They tolerate activities that add no value to their life. They tolerate distractions that steal their focus. And then they say, I don't have time to build my business. I don't have time to learn new skills. I don't have time to work on my goal. You have the same 24 hours as everyone else. The difference is what you tolerate doing with those hours. Successful people refuse to tolerate time-wasting activity. They're ruthless with their time. They say no to things that don't serve their vision. They guard their hours like gold. They invest time. They don't spend it. And because they refuse to tolerate wasted time, they accomplish in years what others don't accomplish in decades. So do an audit. Where is your time going? What are you tolerating that's stealing hours from your life? Social media? Television? Gossip? Unproductive meetings? Aimless web browsing? Whatever it is, you must decide, is this serving my highest vision, or is this just comfortable time wasting? And if it's the latter, stop tolerating it. Cut it out. Replace it with activities that build your future. Napoleon Hill said that successful people do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. And one of those things is refusing to tolerate time waste. 8th, let's talk about tolerating lack of growth. Personal growth is not optional if you want an extraordinary life. You must be constantly learning, evolving, expanding. Napoleon Hill discovered that all successful people are committed to continuous improvement. They read, they study, they seek mentors, they invest in courses, they challenge themselves, they step outside their comfort zones regularly. But most people tolerate stagnation. They tolerate staying the same year after year. They tolerate not reading books. They tolerate not learning new skills. They tolerate not challenging their thinking. They tolerate comfort zones that keep them small. And then they wonder why their life isn't improving. You cannot have a better life without becoming a better person. Your external results will always match your internal development. If you're the same person today that you were 5 years ago, your life is probably the same too. But if you refuse to tolerate stagnation, if you commit to growing every single day, your life will transform. So ask yourself, what am I doing daily to grow? Am I reading? Am I learning? Am I being challenged? Am I seeking wisdom from those ahead of me? Or am I tolerating comfort, tolerating the familiar, tolerating staying exactly where I am? Growth requires intentionality. It requires you to refuse to tolerate the status quo. It requires you to push beyond what's easy. And when you do that consistently, you become unstoppable. Napoleon Hill said that the person who stops learning stops growing, and the person who stops growing starts dying. Don't tolerate stagnation. Commit to continuous evolution. 9th, let's talk about tolerating your own excuses. Excuses are the lies we tell ourselves to justify staying stuck. And most people become masters at making excuses. I don't have time. I don't have money. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have the education. I don't know the right people. The timing isn't right. The economy is bad. On and on and on. An endless stream of reasons why success isn't possible for them. But here's what Napoleon Hill proved. For every excuse you can make, there's someone who had that exact limitation and succeeded anyway. Excuses are just your fear dressed up as logic. And when you tolerate your excuses, when you let them dictate your actions, you guarantee that you'll stay exactly where you are. Successful people don't tolerate excuses, not from others, and especially not from themselves. When an excuse arises, they challenge it. They ask, is this really true or am I just afraid? They look for solutions instead of accepting limitation. They refuse to let excuses be the reason they don't try. So you need to become intolerant of your excuses. Every time one comes up, catch it, question it, challenge it, and then act despite it. Because action is the antidote to excuses. When you act, the excuse loses its power. When you move forward despite your reasons not to, you prove to yourself that the excuse was never valid. And over time, you train yourself to be someone who doesn't tolerate excuses, someone who finds ways instead of reason, someone who creates results instead of justification. And that person achieves extraordinary things. 10th, and this is crucial, let's talk about tolerating separation from your purpose. Every human being has a purpose. Napoleon Hill called it a definite major purpose. It's the reason you're here. It's the contribution you're meant to make. It's the impact you're designed to have. But most people are living completely disconnected from their purpose. They're tolerating lives that don't fulfill them. They're tolerating work that doesn't inspire them. They're tolerating days that feel meaningless. And that disconnection creates a deep internal suffering. But they tolerate it because facing it would require change. Facing it would require courage. Facing it would require stepping into the unknown. So they stay in the safe, miserable, purposeless existence and wonder why they feel empty. But you don't have to. You can refuse to tolerate living out of alignment with your purpose. You can refuse to tolerate another day that doesn't honor your calling. You can refuse to tolerate the safe path when the meaningful path is available. Napoleon Hill said that when you're living in alignment with your purpose, you tap into infinite intelligence. You access resources you didn't know existed. You attract people who support your mission. You feel energized, inspired, alive. But none of that happens if you tolerate purposelessness. So ask yourself, am I living my purpose or tolerating a life that doesn't fulfill me? And if it's the latter, what am I going to do about it? Now, here's what I want you to understand. Everything we've talked about, financial mediocrity, negative relationships, bad habits, poor environments, mediocre results, limiting beliefs, wasted time, lack of growth, excuses, disconnection from purpose. All of these exist in your life because you've tolerated them. But the moment you stop tolerating them, the moment you say, no more, I refuse, this ends now, that's the moment everything begins to change. Because intolerance creates energy. It creates urgency. It creates momentum. Tolerance is passive. It accepts. It waits. It hopes things will change on their own. But intolerance is active. It demands. It moves. It creates change through force of will. Napoleon Hill studied this phenomenon extensively. He found that every major breakthrough in a person's life came after a moment of absolute intolerance. A moment where they said, I'm done. I will not accept this anymore. And that declaration, backed by action, changed everything. So here's your assignment. Take the next 24 hours and make a list. Title it, What I Will No Longer Tolerate, and be ruthlessly honest. Write down every person, every habit, every belief, every behavior, every situation that you've been tolerating that doesn't serve your highest good. And then, next to each item, write one action you can take immediately to stop tolerating it. For example, I will no longer tolerate negative people in my inner circle. Action, have an honest conversation with name or create distance. I will no longer tolerate wasting time on social media. Action, delete apps from phone and install a time tracking app. I will no longer tolerate financial ignorance. Action, buy a book on personal finance and read 20 pages today. The specific actions matter less than the decision behind them. The decision to stop tolerating. The commitment to enforce a new standard. And then, for the next 90 days, live by this list. Every day, look at what you committed to no longer tolerate, and make sure you're not slipping back into old patterns. Because here's the thing, tolerance is a habit, and breaking any habit requires consistency. You'll be tempted to slip back. Your brain will try to convince you that your old standards were fine. People around you will pressure you to tolerate what you used to tolerate, but you must stay firm. You must remember, you become what you tolerate. If you want to become wealthy, stop tolerating poverty behavior. If you want to become healthy, stop tolerating unhealthy choices. If you want to become successful, stop tolerating mediocrity. If you want to become free, stop tolerating anything that imprisons you. This is the path. This is how transformation happens, not through grand gesture, not through sudden luck, but through the daily decision to refuse to tolerate anything less than your highest standard. Napoleon Hill proved this. He showed that the wealthiest, most successful people in the world got there by having higher standards and refusing to tolerate anything below those standards. And you can do the same, starting today, starting now, in this moment. Make the decision, I refuse to settle. I refuse to tolerate. I refuse to accept less than I deserve. And then live that decision every day, every hour, every moment. When you do that, when you truly embody intolerance for mediocrity, your life will transform so fast it will shock you. Things that have been stuck for years will suddenly move. Opportunities that never appeared will show up. People who align with your new standard will enter your life. Resources you needed will materialize. Why? Because the universe responds to standards. When you raise yours and refuse to tolerate anything below them, the universe has no choice but to match your new frequency. If this message has ignited something in you, if you feel that fire of intolerance rising, go to the comments right now and type, I refuse to settle. Declare it. Make it real. Make it public. And then share this video with someone who's been settling, someone who's been tolerating, someone who needs to hear that it's time to raise their standard. You could change their life with this one share. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell for content that will continue to challenge you, elevate you, and push you toward your highest potential. Leave your like. It helps this message reach more people who need it. You were not created to settle. You were not designed for mediocrity. You were not born to tolerate a life that doesn't fulfill you. You were created for greatness. You were designed for excellence. You were born to live at the highest standard possible. But you will only rise to the level of what you refuse to tolerate. So stop tolerating. Stop settling. Stop accepting less. Raise your standard. Enforce them ruthlessly. And watch as your life transforms to match them. Napoleon Hill proved it's possible. Hundreds of successful people demonstrated it. Now it's your turn. You become what you tolerate. So tolerate only excellence. Tolerate only growth. Tolerate only alignment with your highest vision. And become the extraordinary person you were always meant to be. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The life you want is waiting. Stop tolerating anything less. Go claim it. Now.